Part 1. The Battle for Kepler Station. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked his weapon one more time. The human soldier had been fighting aliens for 2 years now, but he still felt nervous before each battle. Around him, his squad of 12 Marines prepared their gear in the cramped transport ship. "Listen up, people," Jake said to his team. "We're going to Kepler Station to help defend it. The blue-skinned Vorthen are coming with a big fleet. Our job is simple: keep them away from the civilians." His squad nodded. They trusted Jake. He had kept them alive through many fights. The other aliens in the war thought humans were crazy because they never gave up. Jake thought that was a good thing. The transport ship shook as it landed on Kepler Station. Jake led his squad out into the metal corridors. The station was huge, like a small city floating in space. Thousands of different aliens lived and worked here. Some were tall and thin, others were short and round. Jake had learned not to judge aliens by how they looked. "Sergeant Morrison," called a voice. Jake turned to see Commander Lopez, another human officer. "The Vorthen fleet is bigger than we expected. They have 30 ships instead of 15. Jake felt his stomach drop. That was bad news. "How many defenders do we have?" "Not enough," Lopez said. "But we have to hold them off until help arrives. The civilians are evacuating to the lower levels. Your squad will guard the main evacuation route." Jake saluted and led his team deeper into the station. They could already hear the sound of weapons firing. The battle had begun. The Vorthen were tough enemies. They were 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. Each one was stronger than 3 humans. But humans had something the Vorthen did not understand. They never knew when to quit. Jake's squad set up their position near the main corridor where civilians were running toward the escape pods. Families of different alien species hurried past them. Some aliens had tentacles instead of arms. Others had fur or scales. Children cried as their parents carried them. "Here they come," shouted Pete, one of Jake's Marines. Through the smoke, Jake could see the Vorthen soldiers marching toward them. Their heavy boots made the floor shake. "Remember your training," Jake called to his squad. "Shoot and move. Don't let them corner you." The fight was intense. Vorthen weapons shot bright red beams that could cut through metal. Human weapons fired small metal bullets very fast. The corridor filled with smoke and noise. Jake dove behind a metal box as a Vorthen beam nearly hit his head. He rolled to the side and shot 3 quick bursts at the nearest enemy. 1 Vorthen fell, but 2 more took its place. "We're getting pushed back," Pete yelled over the noise. Jake looked around. Half of his squad was already wounded. The Vorthen kept coming. There were too many of them. Then Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. Screaming was coming from behind them. Some Vorthen had gotten past their position and were attacking the civilians. "Orders, Sergeant?" asked Maria, his second-in-command. She was bleeding from a cut on her arm but still fighting. Jake had to make a choice. Military rules said they should fall back to a better position. But if they did that, the civilians would die. Jake thought about his little sister back on Earth. He thought about all the alien families he had seen running for safety. "We're not leaving," Jake said firmly. "Pete and Carlos, take 4 men and go help those civilians. Maria, you're with me. We hold this position no matter what." His squad looked at him like he was crazy. It was a suicide mission. But they trusted him. "You heard the sergeant," Maria said. "Let's show these Vorthen what humans are made of." The next 6 hours were the longest of Jake's life. His small group fought against waves of Vorthen soldiers. They used every trick they knew. When they ran out of ammunition, they used alien weapons they picked up. When those broke, they used knives and even pieces of metal. Jake lost count of how many Vorthen they killed. He also tried not to think about how many of his friends had died. By the end, only 4 of his 12 Marines were still alive. But they had done their job. The civilians had escaped. The evacuation ships had gotten away safely. Jake was reloading his weapon when he noticed something strange. One of the civilians they had been protecting was not running away. She was tiny, no bigger than Jake's thumb, with silver hair and blue eyes. She stood on a small platform, giving orders to other small aliens. "Who is that?" Jake asked Maria. "I think that's Princess Zara," Maria said, breathing hard. "She's from the Minari Kingdom. They're really small but very important in politics." Jake stared at the tiny figure. She was so small that a Vorthan could step on her by accident. But she was acting like a leader, making sure her people got to safety. That's when Jake understood why the Vorthan had attacked with so many ships. They were not just trying to take the station. They were trying to capture or kill the princess. If she died, her people would stop being allies with the other species fighting the Vorthan. "We have to protect her," Jake said. "Sergeant, we can barely protect ourselves," Maria replied. Jake looked at his 3 remaining Marines. They were tired, hurt, and almost out of ammunition. The smart thing would be to retreat. But Jake had never been accused of being too smart. "The war depends on keeping that princess alive," Jake said. "If the Minari leave the Alliance, we lose. If we lose, everyone dies, humans, aliens, everyone." Just then, the floor shook. Through the windows, Jake could see coalition ships arriving. Help had finally come. The remaining Vorthan soldiers began to retreat. But Jake knew they would try again. As long as Princess Zara was on the station, she was in danger. Jake walked over to the tiny princess. She looked up at him with eyes that seemed too big for her small face. "Thank you, human soldier," she said in a voice so small Jake had to lean down to hear her. "Your people fought very bravely today." "Just doing our job, Your Highness," Jake replied. Princess Zara smiled. "I have heard that humans never give up. Today I saw that this is true." Jake nodded. He did not know that this meeting would change his life forever. He did not know that the tiny alien princess would soon become the most important person in his world. All he knew was that they had won the battle. The civilians were safe. His friends had died for something that mattered. As the rescue ships docked with the station, Jake Morrison had no idea that his real adventure was just beginning. 2 weeks after the battle at Kepler Station, Jake Morrison found himself standing in the biggest room he had ever seen. The ceremony hall on the Coalition flagship was enormous, with a ceiling so high that Jake could barely see it. Thousands of aliens from dozens of different species filled the seats, all watching him and his 3 surviving Marines. Jake felt uncomfortable in his dress uniform. The medals on his chest felt heavy. He would rather be back in his simple combat gear, but Commander Lopez had told him this ceremony was very important. "Stand straight," whispered Maria, who stood beside him. She was also wearing her dress uniform and looked just as uncomfortable as Jake felt. At the front of the room, a tall alien with purple skin was speaking into a microphone. Jake's translator earpiece turned the alien words into English, but the speech was long and boring. Something about heroism and sacrifice and the bonds between species. Jake's mind wandered. He thought about Pete and Carlos and all the other Marines who had died at Kepler Station. They should be here receiving these medals, not him. Jake had just done what any soldier would do, protect innocent people. "And now," the purple alien said, "we honor the humans who saved Princess Zara and prevented a great disaster for our alliance." Jake snapped back to attention. He and his 3 Marines walked forward to a small stage. The crowd clapped and cheered. Some aliens made whistling sounds, others clicked their tongues. Jake supposed these were all ways of showing approval. One by one, high-ranking officers from different species came forward to pin medals on their uniforms. A snake-like alien with 6 arms gave Jake a medal made of some kind of glowing crystal. A fuzzy creature that looked like a walking carpet presented him with a small metal triangle. Jake tried to look honored, but mostly he just wanted the ceremony to end. He had never liked being the center of attention. Then something interesting happened. A very small platform was carried onto the stage. On it stood 2 tiny figures, no bigger than Jake's thumb. One was Princess Zara, who Jake remembered from the battle. The other was an older male who wore a golden crown. "I am King Aldrich of the Minari Kingdom," the tiny figure announced. His voice was so small that special speakers had to make it louder for everyone to hear. "My daughter was saved by the courage of these human warriors." The king looked directly at Jake. Even though the alien was tiny, his gaze was intense and serious. "According to the ancient laws of my people," King Aldrich continued, When someone saves the life of a member of the royal family, that person has earned the right to ask for any reward within our power to give. Jake blinked in surprise. He had not expected this. Around him, the other aliens began talking excitedly. "Sergeant Jake Morrison," the king said, "what would you ask of the Minery Kingdom?" Jake thought for a moment. He could ask for money, or land, or weapons. But there was only one thing he really wanted. "Your Majesty," Jake said, "I would like my surviving squad members to receive the best medical care available. And I want the families of the Marines who died to be taken care of financially." A murmur went through the crowd. Many aliens seemed surprised by Jake's request. King Aldrich smiled. "This request shows great wisdom and honor. It will be granted immediately." He paused, then continued. "But you have shown such exceptional character that I believe you deserve an additional reward." Jake started to protest. "That's not necessary, Your Majesty." "I disagree," the king said firmly. "My daughter has expressed a desire to learn about human culture and military tactics. She believes your species has valuable lessons to teach the galaxy." Princess Zara stepped forward on the tiny platform. She looked up at Jake with bright blue eyes that seemed far too intelligent for someone so small. "I have been watching how humans fight," she said in her tiny voice. "Your people do things differently than other species. You take risks that others will not take. You protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when it costs you greatly." Jake did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as particularly special. "Therefore," King Aldrich announced, "I grant you guardianship of Princess Zara. She will serve as an ambassador to your people, and you will be her protector and guide as she learns your ways." The crowd erupted in surprised voices. Jake's mouth fell open. He looked down at the tiny princess, who was watching him calmly. "I am not a prize to be won," Princess Zara said clearly, looking directly at Jake. "I chose this arrangement myself. I believe humans have something important to teach the galaxy about courage and honor. I hope you will accept this responsibility, Sergeant Morrison." Jake's mind raced. He had been planning to retire after the war and maybe become a farmer like his father. Taking care of an alien princess had not been part of his plans. But as he looked at Princess Zara, he remembered how brave she had been during the battle. While other civilians ran for safety, she had stayed to help her people evacuate. She was tiny, but she was not weak. "I accept," Jake said finally. Princess Zara smiled. "Good. I promise I will not be too much trouble." Somehow, Jake doubted that. After the ceremony, Jake met with Princess Zara privately in a small room aboard the flagship. She stood on a table so they could talk more easily. "I should explain some things," she said. "My people are small, but we are not helpless. We have been part of the galactic community for thousands of years. We are skilled in technology, diplomacy, and warfare." "Warfare?" Jake asked, surprised. "But you're so tiny." Princess Zara laughed. "Size is not the only factor in fighting, Sergeant Morrison. My people have been fighting the Vorthan Empire for centuries. We know their weaknesses. We understand strategy in ways that larger species do not." Jake began to realize that this arrangement might be more complicated than he had thought. "I have studied human military history," Princess Zara continued. "Your species has only been in space for a few decades, but you have already changed how wars are fought. Other aliens plan carefully and follow rules. Humans adapt and improvise. You do the unexpected. Is that good or bad?" Jake asked. "It is very good," Princess Zara replied. "But I believe humans and Minari could learn much from each other. Your boldness combined with our knowledge could be very powerful." Jake nodded slowly. Maybe this would not be so bad after all. The princess seemed smart and reasonable. "When do we start?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Princess Zara said. "I am told you have been assigned to Earth Station Alpha to train new recruits. I will accompany you and observe your methods." Jake smiled. "Well then, Your Highness, welcome to the human military." Princess Zara grinned back. "Please, just call me Zara. We are going to be partners, after all." As Jake left the room, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was a simple soldier, not a diplomat or a teacher. But maybe that was exactly what Princess Zara needed. One thing was certain. His life was about to become much more interesting. Jake's apartment on Earth Station Alpha was not designed for tiny alien princesses. For the first week, Jake worried constantly about accidentally stepping on Zara or losing her in the furniture. The engineers had built her a beautiful miniature palace in one corner of his living room, complete with tiny furniture and advanced technology systems. Zara hated it. "I did not come here to live in a dollhouse," she announced on her third day, standing on Jake's kitchen table with her hands on her hips. "If I wanted to be isolated from human culture, I could have stayed on my home planet." Jake looked down at the tiny princess. Even when she was angry, she was no bigger than his thumb. "But where will you sleep? How will you eat? Everything here is giant-sized compared to you." "I will adapt," Zara said firmly. "That is what this assignment is about, learning how humans live and work. I cannot do that if I am separated from your daily life." Jake scratched his head. This was going to be more complicated than he had thought. After some creative problem-solving, they worked out a system. Jake built small platforms and ramps throughout his apartment so Zara could move around easily. She slept in a small box lined with soft fabric that sat on his bedside table. For meals, Jake would put tiny portions of food on bottle caps and small dishes. The real challenge came when Jake reported for duty. He had been assigned to train new recruits, young soldiers who had volunteered to fight against the Vorthan Empire. Most of them had never seen real combat. "Permission to accompany you to training, Sergeant," Zara said formally as Jake prepared to leave for the base. "I don't know if that's a good idea," Jake replied. "Military training can be rough. What if someone accidentally hurts you?" Zara climbed onto Jake's shoulder, her usual traveling spot. "I am tougher than I look, Sergeant Morrison. My people have been warriors for thousands of years. I want to see how humans train their soldiers." Jake sighed and carefully made his way to the training facility. He could feel Zara holding onto his uniform collar as he walked. The training center was a large building with obstacle courses, shooting ranges, and simulation rooms. Jake's squad of new recruits was waiting for him, 12 young men and women who looked nervous and eager at the same time. "Attention," Jake called, and the recruits snapped to attention. "I'm Sergeant Morrison, and I'll be training you for the next 6 weeks." One recruit, a young man named Bobby, was staring at Jake's shoulder. "Sergeant, is that a tiny person on your shoulder?" Jake glanced at Zara, who waved at the recruits. "This is Princess Zara of the Minari Kingdom. She's here to observe our training methods. You will treat her with respect." The recruits looked confused but nodded. Jake decided to start with basic combat simulations. The simulation room could create virtual battlefields that felt completely real. Jake programmed a simple scenario. The recruits had to work as a team to capture a defended position. It was a disaster. The recruits panicked when the simulated enemy started shooting. They forgot their training and ran around without coordination. Half of them died in the first 5 minutes. "Stop simulation," Jake called. The virtual battlefield disappeared, leaving the recruits standing in an empty room looking embarrassed. "That was terrible," Jake said bluntly. "You fought like individuals instead of a team. In real combat, that gets everyone killed." The recruits hung their heads. Jake was about to start the simulation again when Zara spoke up. "May I say something, Sergeant Morrison?" Jake looked surprised but nodded. "Go ahead." Zara climbed down from his shoulder and stood on a nearby table where all the recruits could see her. Despite her tiny size, her voice carried clearly through the room speakers. "Your sergeant is correct," she said to the recruits. "But I think I understand the problem. You are thinking like giants." The recruits looked confused. "What do you mean?" asked Lisa, a young woman with red hair. "Giants think that bigger is always better," Zara explained. "Bigger weapons, bigger explosions, bigger attacks. But small things can change everything. One tiny switch turned off. One small mistake by the enemy. One person refusing to give up when everyone else has fallen." Jake watched in amazement as Zara began to explain tactical concepts he had never thought of. She talked about how her people fought enemies much larger than themselves by being precise, patient, and finding weak points that giants could not see. "Let me show you," Zara said. "Sergeant Morrison, may we run the simulation again?" Jake nodded and restarted the program. This time, Zara's tiny voice guided the recruits through the battle. Instead of charging straight at the enemy, she had them move carefully, using cover and teamwork. "Bobby, there is a small gap in the enemy's defenses on the left side," Zara called out. "Lisa, can you create a distraction on the right while Bobby's team moves through the gap?" The recruits began to work together smoothly. They listened to Zara's guidance and followed her strategy. Instead of fighting like 12 individuals, they fought like a single, coordinated unit. They won the simulation easily. After the training session, the recruits gathered around the table where Zara stood. They asked her questions about tactics and strategy. Jake realized that his tiny alien partner had just taught his students more in 1 hour than he had managed in a week. "How did you do that?" Jake asked Zara later, when they were back in his apartment. "Your people and my people see warfare differently," Zara explained. "Humans are brave and adaptable. You never give up, even when the situation seems hopeless. But sometimes you forget to think before you act." Jake nodded. "That was true. My people are small, so we have to be smart," Zara continued. "We study our enemies carefully. We look for weaknesses. We plan every move. But sometimes we are too careful and miss opportunities. So together we balance each other out," Jake said, understanding. "Exactly," Zara smiled. "Your courage with our knowledge. Your adaptability with our precision. It could be very powerful." Over the following weeks, Jake and Zara developed an effective partnership. She would observe his training sessions and offer suggestions. He would explain human military thinking to her. Slowly, his recruits improved dramatically. The breakthrough came when Jake shared something personal with Zara. They were sitting in his apartment one evening, Jake on his couch and Zara on the coffee table, when she asked him about the battle at Kepler Station. "You lost many friends that day," she said gently. Jake nodded, feeling sad. 8 good Marines died because I made the decision to stay and fight. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice." "You saved my life and the lives of thousands of civilians," Zara replied. "How is that not the right choice?" "But my friends died," Jake said quietly. The emergency alarm woke Jake from a deep sleep. Red lights flashed in his apartment as the station's warning system announced a major attack on the Coalition's primary shipyard. Jake jumped out of bed and quickly put on his uniform. "Zara," he called, "we need to move." The tiny princess was already awake and standing on his bedside table, fully dressed in her own miniature uniform. "I heard the announcement," she said. "This is bad, Jake. That shipyard builds most of our warships. If the Vorthen destroy it, we lose the war." Jake grabbed his gear and carefully lifted Zara to his shoulder. They hurried to the command center where dozens of officers were studying battle maps and reports. Commander Lopez spotted Jake immediately. "Morrison, good. We need you for a special mission." Jake approached the main display screen, which showed the shipyard under heavy attack. Hundreds of Vorthen ships surrounded the facility, firing powerful weapons at the shipyard's defenses. "Intelligence reports that this is a decapitation strike," Commander Lopez explained. "The Vorthen are using their biggest command ship to coordinate the attack. If we can disable that ship, their assault will fall apart." "What do you need me to do?" Jake asked. "Lead a strike team onto that command ship and sabotage their main computer system," Lopez replied. "It's a suicide mission, Jake. The ship is heavily defended and deep in enemy territory. But it's our only chance to save the shipyard." Jake studied the tactical display. The Vorthen command ship was massive, at least 10 times larger than any human vessel. Getting inside would be nearly impossible, and getting out alive would be even harder. "I'll do it," Jake said without hesitation. "I'm coming with you," Zara announced from his shoulder. The command center fell silent. Every officer turned to stare at the tiny princess. "Absolutely not," Commander Lopez said firmly. "Princess, with all due respect, this mission is too dangerous. We cannot risk your life." "You cannot succeed without me," Zara replied calmly. "I have studied Vorthen ship designs for years. I know their weaknesses. And my size gives me access to areas where larger beings cannot go. The diplomatic consequences if something happens to you would be catastrophic, Lopez argued. Zara stood up on Jake's shoulder so everyone could see her clearly. Commander Lopez, I am not just a princess. I am also a trained special operations officer in the Minari Royal Guard. I have been preparing for missions like this my entire life. Jake looked at his tiny partner in surprise. She had never mentioned military training before. My people have been fighting the Vorthen longer than any other species, Zara continued. We know their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. Without that knowledge, Sergeant Morrison's mission will fail, and we will lose the war. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as the officers discussed this unexpected development. Finally, Admiral Chen, the highest-ranking officer present, made the decision. Princess Zara, are you absolutely certain about this? Yes, Admiral, Zara replied firmly. Then you have permission to join the mission, Admiral Chen said. God help us all. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in a stealth transport ship with 6 other Marines and 1 tiny alien princess. The team was the best the coalition could assemble on short notice, experienced soldiers who had all volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a one-way trip. Listen up, Jake said to his team as they approached the Vorthen fleet. Our job is to get Princess Zara to the command ship's computer core. She'll upload a virus that will shut down their coordination systems. We protect her, complete the mission, and try to get out alive. The Marines nodded grimly. They all understood the odds. The stealth approach worked perfectly. Their small ship slipped past the Vorthen patrols and attached to the massive command vessel's hull. Jake's team cut through the outer armor and entered the ship's maintenance tunnels. The interior of the Vorthen command ship was dark and maze-like. The corridors were built for creatures 8 feet tall, making them feel enormous to the humans. Strange alien writing covered the walls, and the air smelled like metal and chemicals. The computer core is 17 levels down and toward the center of the ship, Zara whispered from Jake's shoulder. But first we need to disable their security systems. For the next 3 hours, Jake's team moved carefully through the ship. They avoided Vorthen patrols and disabled security sensors. Zara proved to be incredibly valuable. Her tiny size allowed her to crawl through ventilation systems and access panels that the humans could not reach. There, Zara pointed to a small opening near the floor. That conduit leads directly to the main security hub. I can crawl through and shut down the alarm systems. Jake looked at the opening, which was barely large enough for Zara to fit through. Are you sure about this? Trust me, Jake, Zara said as she climbed down from his shoulder. Jake watched nervously as the tiny princess disappeared into the wall. For 10 long minutes, he heard nothing. Then the ship's red security lights turned off. Security systems disabled. Zara's voice came through his radio. I'm heading to the computer core. Meet me there. The team moved faster now that the alarms were off. But as they approached the computer core, they ran into trouble. A full squad of Vorthen soldiers was guarding the entrance. 12 enemies, Jake whispered to his team. We're outnumbered 2 to 1. The fight was intense but brief. Jake's Marines used every tactic they had learned, fighting with the desperate courage that humans were known for. When the smoke cleared, all 12 Vorthen were down, but Jake had lost 3 of his team members. Jake, Zara's voice came through the radio. I'm inside the computer core, but there's a problem. The system is more complex than I expected. I need more time. How much time? Jake asked as he and his remaining Marines secured the area. 20 minutes, minimum. Jake's heart sank. In 20 minutes, the entire Vorthen crew would know they were here. We'll hold them off as long as we can. What followed was the longest 20 minutes of Jake's life. Wave after wave of Vorthen soldiers attacked their position. Jake and his 3 remaining Marines fought desperately, using every piece of cover they could find. 10 more minutes, Zara called out. Jake looked around. 2 of his Marines were wounded, and they were almost out of ammunition. The Vorthen kept coming. 5 more minutes, Zara announced. Jake was down to his sidearm and 1 grenade. The Vorthen were closing in from all sides. Got it, Zara finally shouted. Virus uploaded. The ship systems are crashing. Immediately, Jake could see the effects. The lights flickered and went out. The artificial gravity fluctuated. Emergency alarms started blaring throughout the ship. "Time to go," Jake yelled to his team. They fought their way back through the corridors as the massive ship began to lose power around them. Behind them, Jake could hear Vorthan officers shouting in confusion as their coordination systems failed. The escape was harrowing. With the ship systems failing, doors kept closing unexpectedly and corridors went dark. Jake carried Zara in his pocket to protect her from the chaos. They reached their transport ship just as the Vorthan command vessel began to drift helplessly in space. Without coordination from the command ship, the entire Vorthan attack force fell into disarray. As their small ship flew back toward coalition lines, Jake could see the enemy fleet beginning to retreat. They had done it. The shipyard was saved. "We did it, Zara," Jake said, carefully lifting the tiny princess from his pocket. Zara looked exhausted but triumphant. "We make a good team, Sergeant Morrison." Jake smiled. "The best." Through the transport's window, they watched as coalition reinforcements arrived to drive off the remaining Vorthan ships. The war was far from over, but they had struck a major blow against the enemy. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we go home," Zara replied. "And then we start planning our next mission." Jake laughed. He should have known that one successful mission would not be enough for his tiny partner. Princess Zara of the Minari Kingdom was not the type to sit quietly while there was still a war to fight. And honestly, Jake would not have it any other way. 6 months after the mission to destroy the Vorthan command ship, Jake Morrison sat in his apartment watching the news with Princess Zara. The tiny alien princess stood on his coffee table, both of them focused on the holographic display showing the latest battle reports. "Coalition forces have pushed the Vorthan back on all fronts," the news reporter announced. Military experts credit the new joint tactical doctrine developed by human and Minari strategists for these recent victories. Jake smiled. The joint tactical doctrine had started as simple conversations between him and Zara about different ways to fight. Now it was being used by armies across the galaxy. "We are famous," Zara said with amusement. "Though I notice they do not mention us by name." "That is fine with me," Jake replied. "I never wanted to be famous anyway." The news report continued with footage of human soldiers working alongside tiny Minari specialists. In the videos, Jake could see human Marines carrying small platforms where Minari officers stood, directing precision strikes and coordinating complex battle plans. "It is working better than we ever expected," Zara observed. "Humans provide the courage and adaptability. Minari provide the precision and strategic knowledge. Together, we are defeating enemies that neither species could handle alone." Jake nodded. The partnership between humans and Minari had grown far beyond just military cooperation. Human engineers were working with Minari technicians to build new types of weapons and equipment. Human diplomats were learning negotiation techniques from Minari politicians who had centuries of experience. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Jake opened it to find Commander Lopez and Admiral Chen waiting outside. "Sergeant Morrison, Princess Zara," Admiral Chen said formally. "We need to speak with you both." They gathered around Jake's kitchen table, with Zara standing on a small platform so she could participate in the discussion at eye level with the humans. "The war is almost over," Admiral Chen began. "Intelligence reports suggest the Vorthan Empire is preparing to surrender. Their military has been broken, and their government is falling apart." Jake felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the fighting would end, but sadness because it meant his partnership with Zara might end too. "That is excellent news," Zara said. "How can we help finish this?" Commander Lopez leaned forward. "That is exactly what we wanted to discuss. The Vorthan have requested peace negotiations, but they have one condition. They want the negotiations to be handled by the team that has been most successful against them." "You mean us?" Jake asked, surprised. "Exactly," Admiral Chen confirmed. "They specifically requested that Sergeant Jake Morrison and Princess Zara lead the coalition negotiation team. Apparently, your reputation has spread even to enemy territory." Zara looked thoughtful. "This is unusual. Why would they request their most effective opponents to negotiate peace?" According to our intelligence sources, Lopez explained, the Vorthan respect strength above all else. You two have defeated them repeatedly. In their culture, this gives you the right to dictate terms. Jake scratched his head. I do not know anything about negotiations or diplomacy. Neither did I when we started fighting together, Zara reminded him. But we learned. Besides, I do know about diplomacy. My people have been negotiating treaties for thousands of years. Admiral Chen nodded. Princess Zara would handle the formal diplomatic aspects. Sergeant Morrison would represent the military perspective and ensure the terms prevent future aggression. Jake looked down at his tiny partner. What do you think, Zara? The princess was quiet for a moment, considering. I think this could be our most important mission yet. Not just ending this war, but creating a lasting peace. There is one more thing, Admiral Chen added. The negotiations will take place on the neutral planet of Harmony Station. The talks could last for months. You would be representing not just the coalition, but the new model of cooperation between different species. Jake realized this was bigger than just ending a war. The partnership between humans and Minari had become a symbol of what different species could accomplish when they worked together. We accept, Jake said, speaking for both of them.